Hello everybody, my name is Taliesin Govannon and welcome back to Video Workshops. Today we're going to be taking a look at quarter calls and how to write your own quarter calls. Now I suppose we should start out with what is a quarter call. A quarter call is an invocation that you do in one of the four cardinal directions, east, south, west, or north, meant to invoke or to bring in the energies associated with that particular direction. For example, in general Wicca, east is associated with air, south with fire, west with water, and north with earth. Now, these elemental correspondences come from the Golden Dawn, which base them according to the four winds that blow in the British Isles. Now, even though most people who use these directions don't live in the British Isles, they still work. However, some other traditions will switch up the elemental correspondences. They might put water in the north, for example, just because they have a big body of water to the north of them. Now, I'm not saying which method is better, but I am going to be using the general Wiccan directions as I just described. Now, if at any point you want to try to apply this to your own working and you don't put water in the west, for example, well, just pay attention to what I say about the element and put it in whatever quarter your particular methodology puts it in. The important thing are the energies associated with that particular quarter, not really what direction they're in. Now, before we get into the individual directions and things to help you write quarter calls for them, let me give you a general idea of what we're talking about. Now, for the purposes of this video, I have not prepared a quarter call in advance. I'm honest here. I've went over a lot of what else that I want to say on here, but I haven't actually thought of what quarter call I want to do because I want to do one by the seat of my pants right in front of the camera, just to show you that it is possible to do these kind of things without scripting them ahead of time. And it kind of gives you something to aim towards as you start to write your own quarter calls and practice and get better at doing so. I'm going to go ahead and invoke the elements of air, mainly because air has the kind of things that help when you're doing a video like this. It helps with thought, thinking. It helps with communication. It's really the best quarter to call when you're making a YouTube video. Makes me wish I would have done it before I started filming this. I wouldn't have had to restart as many times as I already have. But let's go ahead and do this. The edit that just happened was because one of my kids came down here and interrupted my take to ask me a question. So honestly, this is my first time I'm trying this. I feel the wind of creation in my spirit as I call to the spirits of the east, elementals of air, powers of intellect and thought, powers of communication. Bring to me your energies. Bless my mind with your wit and your knowledge. Bless my tongue with the words to express myself the way I want to. Bless my life with your wisdom and your permanence. I do call upon you to not only be in my life, but to be in this circle that I am holding here on this day. Bring to me your gifts of intelligence and thought and speech. Give to me your gifts of clarity as I do continue to make this YouTube video. Spirits of the East, elementals of air, I do welcome you. Blessed be. Did you like that one? For me, I would say that's a pretty average one for me. But I did that off the seat of my pants just to show you that it can be done. And now we're going to go over the type of things that you need to look at in every elemental invocation, i.e. quarter call, as well as specifics for each individual direction. One further thing I wanted to go over before we get into the individual directions is the fact that there are some correspondences I'm going to be talking about that go along with the elements, air, fire, water, or earth, and other correspondences that are going to go along with the direction, such as east, south, west, or north. As I mentioned before, your particular tradition may place a particular element in a different direction. And like I said, you can shift the correspondences for that element to whatever direction that your particular methodology associates with it. But with the individual directions, such as, for example, you'll hear me in the next section talking about how east is associated with the morning, the break of day, the beginning of things. That doesn't change because the east is where the sun rises, and it doesn't matter if you're in the northern or southern hemisphere. It doesn't matter what direction a body of water is in or anything like that happens. The sun always rises in the east, and it always sets in the west. So while the correspondences I give for the elementals themselves, air, fire, water, or earth, may shift around depending on your particular tradition or way of working, the correspondences associated with the directions themselves, east, south, west, and north, those don't change. The sun always rises in the east and it sets in the west, no matter where you are on the planet. All right? Well, let's go ahead and get going into the elements themselves. I'm going to start in the east. In common Wiccan practice, the east is where you begin and end all circulations around the circle. And so we'll go ahead and start in the east with this as well. Now, the east is associated with the element of air. Air has to do with thoughts, with concepts, with new beginnings, that kind of thing. It has to do with intellect. It has to do with communication. We use air to speak. So you can see how air and communication can be linked like that. Now, in addition to the correspondences with the air, the direction of the east is also associated with the rising sun. It's associated with the break of day, with new beginnings, with starting on a journey, that kind of thing. Let's say if you were going to start a new project and you wanted to do a blessing. Well, you could face east when you do the blessing to bless your new project because that's the direction associated with beginnings. Now, the direction of the south is associated with midday, with the noontime hour. So anything that you would think of as associated with that time of day is going to be associated with this direction. It is associated with fire. And fire has to do with will, with energy, with direction, with motivation, all those things associated with the element of fire. So, for example, you may face east if you want to get a blessing on a new project, but if you want to make sure you have the energy to really go at that project and not, procrastinate or anything like that, that's where you want to invoke fire for your energy, for your will, for your determination. Anything associated with fire, passion, energy, that kind of stuff. In the West, we have the element of water. Now, water has to do with our feelings, our emotions. That the West is also where we put things having to do with intuition, with psychic ability. If you're going to be doing a lot of tarot readings, maybe you should face west when you ask for a blessing to help you with those tarot readings, that kind of thing. But also if you're having to do stuff having to do with emotions, and that's any emotions, whether it's love or anger or grief. Anytime you're doing a working to help you through a particular emotion, you're going to want to work with water, and you're going to want to work in the West. Again, as long as your tradition puts water in the West. Now also, the direction of west outside of the elemental correspondences has to do with twilight, with dusk, with that time in between day and night. The west is an excellent direction to face when you're dealing with spirits. If you're going to be doing, say, a seance, or maybe working with a Ouija board, or working with some other type of spirit communication. A blessing from the west would certainly help with these things. In the north is where we find the elements of earth. Now, earth has to do with the physical world. Solidity is a great word to associate with earth. It also has to do with fertility, all that physical stuff. In the west you find love, but in the north is where those feelings of love or maybe passion from the south get turned into wanting to be fertile, getting on with it, doing the horizontal mambo, that kind of thing. You're going to find fertility in the north. So also be careful, though, because the north is a great direction to get laid, but it's also a great direction to produce offspring. So if you're doing an invocation to bring on great feelings of passion and intense sex, maybe work with fire instead of north, because north has a lot to do with fertility. But it also has to do with prosperity. If you're doing money spells and money magic, pay particular attention when you invoke the earth. It also has to do with health and body stuff and that kind of thing. So there's a whole lot packed into the earth. A lot of stuff that people do spells for, health and money, those all have to do with the element of earth. So there's probably a lot of people who either are or should be doing some serious northern invocations and asking for blessings from those spirits before they do a lot of their magic. Now, aside from the elemental correspondence, the north is also associated with midnight, with the dark times of the day. Not so much dark metaphorically as in bad, but just without light. A lot of people will also ascribe the midnight lands to places where spirits dwell in between incarnations. As a matter of fact, with a combination between the association with the beyond lands in the north and the association with psychic and intuition stuff in the west, I've seen traditions that use ancestor altars place them in the northwestern part of their temple space. And that is entirely apropos. Now that we've gone over the individual directions and elements, let's take a look at how you can plug these things into a basic invocation. Now, I know that the one I did at the beginning of this video was kind of poetic, and I like to throw some flowery phrases in there, but that's me. I'm not only someone who comes from British traditional Wicca, or at least an offshoot thereof, but I also hang out with ADF Druids, which means when it comes to high Episcopagan ritual, I'm there pretty much no matter where I go spiritually. So I like to make things ornate. But the important thing to remember with quarter calls is the feeling. In reality, you're invoking the element internally. It's a process of reaching out with your thoughts, with your soul, with your spirit, and connecting with that elemental and drawing it to you. Let me give you a great example. Let's say again, you're invoking the element of air. I always take a good amount of time to take some deep breaths, to feel the air coming in and being breathed out of my body. Breathe in, breathe out. And that makes me mindful of my breathing, because every time I breathe in, I am drawing that energy of that element to me. So even before I say a word, I'm starting to attract the element of air towards me by connecting the air in the spiritual world, the spirits of air, with the air inside of my own body, the air that keeps me alive, that keeps me breathing. And once you've breathed in and out a few times and you really, really focus on the fact that you're breathing this air in and then out of your body, and then reaching out with your feelings and with your emotions to the element of air. That is really one of the biggest parts of the process. The words you say are just kind of there to seal the deal. And if you're working in a group with other people, it helps let everybody else know what you're doing so that they can be on the same page, so that they can be using the air within their bodies to call out to the spirits of the air as well. So before you even say a word, you're already calling these elements. Now, what else do you do for the other elements? Well, when you're calling fire, I feel the warmth in my body. I mean, I really take a moment to close my eyes and feel the heat that is inside of me as a warm-blooded creature. The heat that I'm radiating out from my skin at all times. And I connect with that heat within my body as I'm calling the element of fire in. When I am connecting with the element of water, I become aware of the blood in my veins, the blood coursing through the veins in my body. I pay attention to my heartbeat, and I see the blood rushing through my veins with every single beat of my heart. And as I'm doing that, I am calling out to the spirits of the element of water, because we're 70% water, folks. So we've got a lot of that particular element in our bodies. You can also focus on the water in your eyes, or maybe the water in your mouth, your saliva, but connect with some kind of water in your body. And use that when you're calling out to the element of water. Likewise with the element of earth. The bones in your body are a great representative of the element of earth. So feel your body, feel the solidity in your body as you are starting to call this particular element. And again, the words are just there to seal the deal. Now let's get down to writing some quarter calls, or at least coming up with them and saying them aloud here in this video. Now really, all you need to do for a particular quarter call is to call out to the spirits of the elemental in that quarter. So if you're like most other modern Wiccans or a lot of other pagans, you'll associate the east with air. So if you're calling the east, you're calling out to the spirits of the elementals of air. And really, you don't need anything more than saying, spirits of the elementals of air, spirits of the east, I do call to you to be a part of my ritual that I am working here at this time. Blessed be. That's really all you need. Same with the south and the west and the north. You can just plug in the different directions and the elementals as you go. That's all you need to do. As long as you're calling the element from within while you're saying the words are just frosting on the cake. But you know what? Sometimes words can really help get you in a mood. Or if you're having trouble connecting with an energy, the words can really help you connect with that energy. And it's all a process. And let me tell you something. Even people who've been doing rituals for over 30 years, like myself, there are times where we're going to do a ritual and there's just something. We're having a problem connecting. You just feel like you're not quite there. So it doesn't matter how new you are or how experienced you are. Occasionally you need a little nudge. And that's where bringing in the stuff about that particular element can really help get you to the place where you're really connecting with that element on the inside. Now, let me give you a great example for the element of north. The element of earth, the direction of the north. Wow. Can you tell I've been up for a while recording videos? Anyway, I'm going to choose the element of earth because I'm a Virgo. I'm very connected with the element of earth. If you ask me to do a quarter call at your ritual, last minute, seat of my pants, and you say, which direction do you want? I'm going to say north for earth, or whatever direction you say earth is, because that's kind of my wheelhouse. So what do we associate earth with? We associate earth with fertility. Now, it's not just fertility of the body, though. Fertility could be of the mind and of the spirit as well. So remember that. It could be for fertility, though. It could be for health. It could be for money, prosperity, all these things that you're calling in the north. So if you were to, say, want to add some extra words to your invocation to help yourself, Or let's say you're doing a ritual with other people and they're not quite as experienced as you are, and you're trying to get them to the place where they can really feel those earth energies. That's where you throw in some correspondences, such as spirits of the north, elementals of earth, masters in the domain of the material plane. Bring to me your powers of prosperity, your powers of health, your powers of fertility, not just of the body, but of the mind and spirit. Bring these energies to me as I work this right. Elementals of earth, you are welcome here. Blessed be. Now you compare that with a basic elemental invocation of spirits of the north, elementals of earth. I do call you to be here in this circle as I work it. Blessed be. Two different invocations. They pretty much give you the same end. And you could do that in any direction. In the east, you could talk about powers of communication, powers of intellect, powers of the mind. In the south, you could talk about powers of energy, powers of passion, powers of will and motivation. And in the west, you could invoke things like powers of prophecy, powers of psychic ability, powers of emotion, the emotion of love, whatever you're looking to invoke in that particular ritual, you could put those in the west. So really, it's a question of getting a basic quarter call form down and just putting the different correspondences into it. Now, I will say you can write completely in different poems for each direction if you want to, but I'm somebody who really thinks that reading off paper detracts from at least my ability to work a rite. So I try to come up with forms for my invocations that I can memorize. That way I don't have to worry about reading them out of my Book of Shadows. It's funny, I have this very elaborately written Book of Shadows that I almost never use in ritual because I've memorized all the rites that I do out of there. Of course, you do things long enough and it's just going to happen. So don't worry if you can't memorize your rituals right away or if you have to read off papers for a while. As long as you're doing the same thing all the time, you're going to learn it. You're going to memorize it eventually, whether you want to or not. So really, I would recommend having your quarter calls have a basic form that you do for every direction and that you just put different things into. But of course, if you're poetically minded and have a great mind and can memorize lots and lots of lines, you can do that too. Okay, we've gone over the elements, the directions, and how to turn these things into a basic quarter call. And that's really all we have to talk about in this particular workshop. Now, again, like I said, if your particular tradition puts the elements in different directions, go ahead and move the elemental correspondences as I gave them to whatever direction that your particular methodology says to do, whatever you're comfortable with. Hey, be sure to like this video down below and subscribe and hit that little bell notification next to the subscribe button if you want to be notified whenever I upload a new video. And if you have any questions about this or you have any ideas on other subjects you'd like me to cover in video workshops, go ahead and leave me a comment down below. I read every comment, even if I don't get a chance to respond to them all, so you will be heard. My name's Taliesin Govannon, and thank you for spending the time with me. Blessed be.